Extremists, religious fanatics, Nazi collaborators, Kremlin propaganda violates the rights of Crimean Tatars in occupied Crimea. For Putin, Crimean Tatars oppose Ukraine. National minorities are protected. Russia takes care of the rehabilitation of Crimean Tatars. Detector Media's analytical team closely monitors the spread of the most extreme fakes created by Kremlin propaganda. My name is Vadym Miskyi. In the next 10 minutes, I will tell you the key points. Let's get started. Extremists, religious fanatics, Nazi collaborators. Kremlin propaganda does not mince words when it comes to Crimean Tatars. This is done to justify persecution on ethnic grounds. According to the Ukrainian ombudsman, among the 180 political prisoners in Crimea held by Russia, 116 are Crimean Tatars.
Світ має знати, повернуться в міжнародні відносини повага і порядок лише тоді, коли у Крим повернеться український прапор, коли там буде свобода, так само, як і всюди в Україні.
The decision to return Crimea should be made by Ukraine, the White House says. The United States has pledged to support Ukraine. This includes a counter-offensive by the Ukrainian armed forces. But the final decision is up to Kyiv.
According to the Financial Times, a high-ranking advisor of President Zelensky signaled that it might not be longer a precondition to get Crimea back to start negotiations. Is that a development the White House would applaud?
First of all, I don't know that the Zelensky administration has spoken to that, and we certainly wouldn't get ahead of them. What I would tell you is, and we've said this from the very beginning, that only President Zelensky can determine if and when he's ready to negotiate and in what context and over what. We believe that nothing should be negotiated about Ukraine without Ukraine. Nothing should be done or said or moved on without President Zelensky's full approval. That's where we are.
This is how the temporarily occupied Crimea is preparing for the 2023 holiday season. The propagandists are getting emotionally prepared for the yellow and blue flag to fly in Crimea soon.
Итак, Россия укрепляет свои оборонительные позиции в Крыму, активно готовясь к возможному наступлению ВСУ, сообщает ваш пост. В публикации прилагаются спутниковые снимки компании, американской, конечно, Максар, на них видны десятки километров окопов, глубокие канавы и так называемые зубы дракона. Также сообщается об установке артиллерии вдоль берега Черного моря.
According to the human rights organization Crimea SOS, at least a third of the political sentences were passed after Russia's full-scale invasion. They mostly concerned those involved in the Islamic organization Hizb ut-Tahrir. I should note that Hizb ut-Tahrir stands for non-violent measures. However, Russia has recognized the organization as extremist. Crimean Tatars oppose Ukraine. There are many such reports in Russian media space. Here is one of the collaborators.
Собрание даст хороший импульс людям, чтобы эти люди могли пройти в свои общины, в села, в городе, могли объяснить той ситуации, в которой мы находимся, и ту политику, которую проводит наше государство. Мы приняли резолюцию, где мы полностью поддерживаем политику нашего президента и главы республики Сергея Валерьевича Аксенова.
But these are only isolated cases of cooperation with the occupation authorities. In addition, this message is not only at odds with the reality, but also with another Russian propaganda message about the sabotage that Crimean Tatars are doing to support the Ukrainian army. Crimea will come back to Ukraine.
Логіка війни абсолютно очевидна. Ми з вами точно зможемо проговорити про реалії Криму на набережній Ялті. Це питання 6 місяців, чи 5,5, чи 5, чи 7. Це питання не в часі. Це питання, що це буде точно там. І ми зможемо точно говорити про абсолютно ефективне майбутнє Криму як такого.
Russia's lack of both missiles and ammunition is obvious. This doesn't mean that the Kremlin will not continue its attacks. But according to an advisor to the head of the office of the president of Ukraine, Russia will not be able to hold on to Crimea. After the so-called reunification of Crimea with Russia, Putin issued a decree on rehabilitation of Crimean Tatars. This message is often used by Kremlin propagandists. To support the myth of almost absolute support of the occupation of Crimea by local residents, propagandists get help from foreign fake experts.
Zelensky doesn't understand is, 96% of the population in Crimea is pro-Russian. So when he speaks of, freedom coming to Crimea with the Ukrainian flag, how can you speak of freedom when 96% of the people don't want you there, Zelensky? They're Russian and they're forever going to be part of Russia.
A military attack on Crimea would lead to tragedy, Putin said in his visit to the peninsula on the anniversary of the occupation. The entire civilized world is ready to help Ukraine liberate Crimea. However, the leader of the Crimean Tatar people, Mustafa Dzhemilev, believes that Muslim countries' support in the fight against Russian aggression is insufficient.
Буде відвертим, то маю визнати, що ми, мусульмані Криму, чекали значно більшої підтримки з боку мусульманських країн. Тим більше, що російська агресія розпочалася саме з окупації нашої батьківщини у лютому 2014 року та найбільшим репресіям і знущенням, викраденням та вбивством, арештом та незаконним судилищем піддавались мусульмані Криму.
Should Russia be allowed to keep Crimea?
Since 2014, we have been talking to my dear friend Putin about this, and this is what we have requested from him. We asked him to return Crimea to its rightful owners. These are our descendants at the same time, the people who are living there. If you were to take this step forward, if you could leave us, you would also be relieving the Crimean Tatars and Ukraine as well. That's what we have always been saying. But since then, unfortunately, no step has been taken forward.
I would like to remind you that a year ago at the Crimean Platform Summit, attended by representatives of more than 50 states, the participants called on the Kremlin to immediately stop its attempts to change the demographic structure of Crimea by resettling Russian citizens. So what is Russia trying to achieve? It wants as many people in the world as possible to buy into the myth that Crimea is Russian. In an attempt to justify the occupation, propagandists employ foreign speakers.
If you're wondering why Putin seized Crimea, it was in direct retaliation for the coup that we backed in Ukraine in 2014. This is the origin of the conflict. And, if you want to understand where this comes from, you have to go back to this. And the fact that Trump's willing to talk about it is pretty incredible.
Crimea is Ukraine, period.
We are convinced that victory will be ours, and for Ukraine, I want to emphasize it once again, for the military command, for the president, for our citizens, they used to say that it all started with Crimea and it will end in Crimea, and our victory will be the return of all our territories, including the Crimean Peninsula. This is why shortly in year 2023, we hope that Ukrainian Crimea will be free.
Lastly, I remembered a funny video that became a meme.
Вообще не хочу уезжать из Крыма из-за Алушты. Как здесь классно вообще.
Привыкла, да?
Я привыкла здесь, как в своем доме жили. Настолько все душевно. По-домашнему.
Russians will have to leave Crimea, even if it's so welcoming and homey there. After all, Crimea is Ukraine. See you soon.